Tensions continue between the Israeli forces and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, launched strikes against Gaza on Monday evening, hours after a rocket fired from the coastal area hit a home in central Israel. The Israeli Defense Forces also closed two crossings into Gaza due to the escalating conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu cut short his visit to Washington to return home, leaving ahead of an expected high-profile speech that had been scheduled for today. And to discuss the situation in Israel, let's go to Joe Gehr. He's a security expert and a former Israeli defense officer. Thank you for joining us, Joe.
Good afternoon.
So first of all, why this escalation and why now?
That's always a million-dollar question. Unfortunately for Hamas, which is a terrorist organization basically seeking the destruction of Israel, and then like some of the other jihadi organizations, like the ones you know, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, etc., they have global ambitions, but their first station is to wipe off Israel from any Jews. Unfortunately, they don't need any type of excuses, right? So the timing right now is interesting. You know, the elections are soon, but the fact is that when Israel left the Gaza Strip 100% in 2005, hoping that Hamas and the Gazans would take advantage of this to build the Middle Eastern Singapore, what happened was a radicalization of the Gaza Strip. And actually, in 2007, Hamas takes over with a coup. Basically, it's a tyrannic dictatorship, so to say. And they've been using the people of Gaza as human shields for years and years and years. Since 2007 to around 2009, there were almost 10,000 rockets fired at Israeli civilian populations. And at that time, just to give you some perspective, you know, I know your offices are in Doral. Imagine that someone in Coral Gables is shooting missiles at you, and all you have is, at some point, even 15 seconds or 20 seconds to run and take shelter. That's crazy, you know? And now imagine 10,000 occasions like that, where if it wasn't for the Israeli technology, we would have hundreds or thousands of casualties, okay? Fortunately, we have technology, but even so, in 2009, basically we were fed up in Israel with this situation of rockets falling in inner cities. So the IDF went and did what was called Operation Cast Lead. That brought in some silence, some tranquility for a few years. Up until 2012, we had another major operation. And then in 2014, again, every time because of the amount of rockets that are shot. And so this time it's one more time. I was thinking that it was going to trigger again another operation because it's really unbearable. Again, imagine that you're living your life and you have 15 minutes to take your kids in the middle of the night and go and find shelter. This has been the reality since 2007, since Hamas took over the Gaza Strip. And I just wanted to mention that prior to that, what we had from Hamas was a wave of suicide bombings in our shopping centers, obviously always targeting civilian populations. So that's the situation. It's a sad reality for many reasons that we don't have the time right now to discuss. It hasn't been taken, dealt with in a way that changes that reality. But we have this situation today where they shot a rocket into the center population of Israel, just north of Tel Aviv. And, you know, it is what it is.
Talking about that precisely, Egyptian mediators had brokered a ceasefire, but the firing continued overnight despite it. So what's the status of this agreement?
Right. So we really haven't heard much from the Israeli government. You know, as you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu was in Washington making a major announcement with the U.S. recognition of the Golan Heights as Israeli territory. And so he just made it back home to Israel a few hours ago. And I'm sure that in the next hours or so, we'll hear some type of communication coming from them as to what's the next step. But in the interim, the only ones talking about the ceasefire were Hamas. After they shot, several missiles, they were saying that there was that there was a ceasefire in the prospect, and we really never. I personally didn't hear that from any Israeli official.
Joe Gehr, thank you so much for taking the time and explaining to us this very complex situation. We'll see you next time.